My name is Dave. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Dave.
And this is my wife, Polly. And Polly and I were married on October the 27th, 1980. There's some things I want to beg you not to overlook. We have been married for a long time. None of what we're going to talk about this morning happened to us overnight. We were not the people then in 1980 that we are now. I have 4 marriages in my life. Polly is my 4th wife, so you can tell how successful I was in relationships prior to 1980. I mean, it's not a record, but it's close. And as one of my Al-Anon friends likes to point out, I was the only common denominator in all of those failed marriages. And so what we want to present today, we are proposing as a way of life, as a way to live, as a way to gradually alter your attitude so that you become happy with your life and with the way it goes. And we don't have any magic formula that will let you get up tomorrow and be the kind of person you think you'd like to be. You have to aim for that. You go toward that at all times. There is no magic formula and there's no magic pill. I've tried all the pills. There is no magic ones. So Polly and I were married on October the 27th of 1980, which means October the 27th of this year we will have been married 29 years. And I love my wife more today than I ever have. I don't know of anybody that has a better marriage than I do. I know a lot of people that have a marriage that I think is as good as mine, but I don't know of anybody that has a better one. But all of the marriages that I was in and all of the relationships I was in before Polly gradually just inexorably ground down into dreary failure. And a bad thing about failure is that often it takes a long time. You just keep slowly sinking into the quicksand. And finally your nose goes under and it's over. But the problem was I didn't have any idea how to have a relationship with anybody. I mean, who was my role model? Who was your role model for healthy relationships? So we frequently don't learn from the healthiest people in the world. And it's really easy to blame other people around us for our failures. And you can do that as long as you want to. Nothing will stop you from being a victim. If you insist on being a victim, you can be one. Nobody will stop you. The only thing is that just makes the problem worse, much worse. So what was the problem for the most part? The problem was that we were selfish and self-centered. These are characteristic traits of alcoholics and people of our type. Selfish, self-centered. Being selfish and self-centered doesn't necessarily mean that we thought well of ourselves. It just means that we thought only of ourselves. And so it is a symptom of our disease, or maybe it's really more a symptom of our humanness, that we were restless and irritable and discontent, especially when we didn't get our way. And there's a quote in the big book from Dr. Silkworth that says, they are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the ease and comfort which comes at once from taking a few drinks, or whatever you're hooked up on. or eating a half gallon of ice cream, or acting, being sexually frantic, or any number of things. So frequently, people that we're trying to have a relationship want to know why we're that way. And what they really want to know, the question they want answered but don't ask, is, what did I do to make you that way? And, and most often, nobody did anything. I'm just that way. It just is a symptom of being me. Sometimes for no reason that I understand, I'm just restless and irritable and discontent. And if you ask me why, I cannot tell you. If you insist that I tell you, I'll make something up. And what I will make up, I'll try to make something up that won't be accusing you of anything, because I don't want you to retaliate. And it won't make me look bad, because I don't ever like to look bad. So I'll think of something that you'll accept. I won't look bad, and you won't think I'm blaming you for it. Now, we're going to talk about some of the differences between men and women before we're through with this. But so if you can't accept that, then you need to think about it, I believe, okay? Sometimes you're just going to be restless and irritable and discontented. And as far as you know, nobody did anything to you. And if you are not the one that's in that state, don't insist that the person who is tell you why they're in that state, because most of the time they don't have any idea why they're in that state. Just, leave it alone. It'll go away. If you want to live a life of chronic frustration and anxiety, there are a few things that you can do to pull that off. One is you can make sure that you're easily offended. Go around looking for ways to be offended. Another one is that you can insist on being right. Being right is critically important for a lot of us. You can develop the attitude that somehow you're more sensitive, or in some way you're superior or more deserving than your partner, that you should have more consideration, that your feelings should be taken into account more carefully. And what this is a victim role which says, I am depending on you to treat me in such a way that I will feel okay. Well, that's a trap. That'll guarantee that you'll be chronically frustrated, because most people aren't interested in leading their lives to assure you that you have what you want, because what you want changes from moment to moment. Another one is to make sure that you win or appear to win at everything. Cheat if you have to. The question is not, how am I? The question is, how do I look? Looking good is really important to many of us. Pay close attention to how much stuff you have. Okay, having a lot of stuff is really critically important too. Rely on achievement. Have a lot of things that you have accomplished, or that you say you have accomplished, to hold up, to show that you are in some ways or many ways superior, or more intelligent, or more sensitive, or more accomplished. And the last one is to make sure that your reputation appears immaculate at all times. So, because we had a lot of years like this, our expectations were almost never met, because they were unrealistic. So we tried to address these issues in several different ways. Polly and I, when we first got hooked up, we were really, really in love with each other. We really, truly loved each other, and we really, truly wanted our marriage to work. We laugh about it, but I was not, I'm not happy that I've been married 3 times and they've all failed. I don't know, and what's really frustrating is I don't know why they failed. Not really. I was told it was my fault, and I knew a lot of it probably was, but parceling out blame doesn't solve any problems. Who's to blame for what? It doesn't solve anything. So we tried a lot of different things. We tried, first of all, the biggest benefit we had was that we were around people in Alcoholics Anonymous who were supportive and who were also interested, because they were our friends and our support group. They were interested in us being successful. So we had a lot of support, and we were encouraged to don't do things abruptly. Don't disrupt things abruptly. Take it easy. One day at a time. So we also tried some psychotherapy. We got in with a therapist at one point in our lives, and we found that therapy is a good way to get some information, but it doesn't really heal anything. Okay, what heals is that we found what heals was Alcoholics Anonymous. Therapy is beneficial. Therapy we are not at all unhappy that we went to therapy, but because it provided a lot of information and gave us a lot of insights, but it didn't heal anything. What began to heal us actually was Alcoholics Anonymous. And trying to just live this way of life, whether you're in AA or Al-Anon or whatever you're in. So I want to talk about what I think is probably the key issue here, and then we will expand on that as we go along. And the thrust of our presentation today is how do we use. Well, let me lay a little background for this. In the mid-1940s, Alcoholics Anonymous was 5-6 years old, and very young, and was coming apart at the seams. People were arguing over who is right and who's not right, and who is people were getting kicked out of AA for misbehavior, and groups were splitting up, and egos were flying rampant, and we had no traditions to guide us, and the whole operation, the whole organization was just coming apart at the seams. And it became clear to the founders that if we don't do something, we're going to lose the whole thing. And those of us who are in here and who are sober and who consider this to be vital to our lives, we're going to lose it. And we are in real danger of that happening. So we came up with 12 traditions on how the hell are we going to get along with each other? Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to run this thing? Where does the authority lie in this thing? How do we treat each other? And so we have taken those ideas, the ideas underlying the 12 traditions, and used them as a guide to our marriage. How do we use these same ideas in our marriage? They work great for AA, and they've been working for Al-Anon. How do we use them in our marriage? So, and what we found out was that the trick in relationships is frequently thought to be finding the right person, finding your soulmate. It's a romantic notion. It has a lot of appeal to the romantically inclined. And I'm not really sure what a soulmate is. I don't know if it's ever really been defined, but I'm not really sure what it is if it has. But what we found is that the trick is not to find the right person. The trick is to be the right person. It's not going to do you any good to find the right person if you're not the right person. If you try to imagine who your Mr. Wonderful or Miss Wonderful is, and you define them down to the nth degree. You know, if I define Miss Wonderful for me, you know, how tall does she have to be? What kind of sense of humor does she have to have? What kind of fragrances does she wear? How does she fix her hair? What colors does she wear? You know, I mean, really go into detail on exactly who is Miss Perfect for me. And then ask myself the question, if she came up and sat down next to me right now, would she stay? If I'm not the right person, the answer is no. So it didn't do me any good to find her. She's not going to hang out with me. So we have found that the trick is to be the right person, not find the right person. So, you know, if you ran an ad in a personals column in a newspaper, and you were really honest in this ad, and you were looking for a mate, a partner, you know, how might it read? You know, the key phrase being, if you were truly honest. You know, and the one I put together for me was wanted, single female, must be willing to tolerate slovenly, insensitive mate, must cheerfully endure for long periods without interactive communication other than occasional grunts, must happily accept constructive criticism regarding dress, personal habits, vocabulary, hygiene, driving, language, housekeeping, laundry methods, cooking, and clothes folding. Must remain calm and unflappable during loud, immature, sometimes crude or vulgar outbursts, and must quickly overlook and forget all threats and false bravado. Tolerance of poor hygiene and flatulence a plus. You know, and some version of that is what too often many of us bring to the party. And we're trying to figure out why our relationships don't work. You know? And we like to fall back on statements like, well, I've always been that way. You know, as though that excused it. So, you know, the thing is, would you want to have a relationship with anybody that would even answer that ad? So, we have a lot of problems. People like us have a lot of background problems that have affected us. Okay, many of us have been abused in every imaginable way. Okay, there are people here who come out of families that don't like each other. They've never seen a mother and father, or a relationship that really worked and worked well, that was full of love and kindness. Many of us come out of abusive homes where we have been abused in one way or another. We've been unduly punished. We have been taught how to behave, how to exist in these hostile environments. We have learned how to put our defenses up. We have learned how to protect ourselves to the best that we can. We have learned how to avoid unpleasant situations by just staying in the corner or the closet or somewhere and being quiet. We learn all these things growing up, and the thing is, I'll tell you flat out, if you have learned that, you don't have to spend the rest of your life contending with that behavior. You don't have to. You know, if you want to, nobody's going to stop you. But you don't have to. But as I said when I started, the way out is not through some magic pill or some incantation or some ceremony. Okay? The way out is changing the way you live and think. And that is a slow process. So what if it's slow? It's better than no process at all. You know, it's better than throwing away your whole life. So if you don't have the capacity to be honest with yourselves. Get in programs like Alcoholics Anonymous. People in AA don't mind getting right in your face and telling you you're just lying. That's not true. You're lying. Or what about this? You just completely overlooked this. You try to excuse that. This needs to change. They don't mind doing that. Why do they do it? Because they care about you. They want you to care about them. They want you to help them get better too. So, you don't have to, whatever you are today, you don't have to be that way 5 years from now, 2 years from now, 1 year. You can change. You can begin to change anytime you want to. So what I'm trying to say is that there may be some people who will sit around and let you stew in your own mess and never say anything, and I'm not one of those people. I want you to. I much prefer smiles to frowns. I like to look at people and see them smiling at me rather than frowning. So, You cannot think your way into good living. You have to live your way into good thinking. And so we have a lot of dysfunctional behavior that's behind us. My family was dysfunctional because I was in it. We get hung up on things that are so unimportant, they're ridiculous. And when you hold them up to the light of day, they're just laughable, Have you ever seen any arguments going over which way the toilet paper rolls? Over the top or under the bottom? I don't like under the bottom. I want it rolling over the top. And if you catch me in a bad mood, I think, well, how would I like it if my wife, after I had just changed a tire for her on her car, told me she didn't like the way I had replaced the lug nuts? They were out of order. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. It's just silly. But, sometimes we get these silly ideas in our head, and we want it a certain way, and we're willing to, by God, die for that way. And you better do it that way. So, so we have a lot of things that come along that are like this. We have some, taste or preference in the way food is prepared. Now, I can make mention in front of some people that how my mother cooked at one time, and I can guarantee you they're going to say something like, "Why don't you go dig her up and get her to cook your supper then?" See, you never know what's going to set somebody off. And so what we have to do is get beyond that kind of stuff and realize what's important to my life. We have to be considerate of people who have been exposed to a lot of sexual or emotional abuse. We have people who have been perpetually accused of being lazy or stupid or incompetent, and relentless nagging. We grew up in homes where there was relentless nagging. Don't nag. Whatever you do, don't nag. It doesn't produce a desired result in any way. And all it does is make you look like a bitch or a jerk. That's all nagging does. And don't be criticizing other people's appearance or their ideas about, how many of you have ever been criticized because of because of the way you dressed, or how many of you heard a parent or somebody say, "You're going out dressed like that," after you've just spent an hour and a half putting this look together? So, these are character defects that we readily recognize under different disguises. We know from being in the recovery programs that we're in, that it's not good to be judgmental. Well, it's not good in relationships either. If your spirit is ever going to soar, if you're ever going to have a mate who is delighted that she or he is hooked up with you, you're going to have to let them go free. We have a saying that we use sometimes: if you love someone very much, let them go free. If they return of their own free will, they are yours forever. If they don't, hunt them down and kill them. So, over and above all that stuff, there are other distinct differences that we have to deal with. For those of us who are in the typical relationships, I hate to break this to you, but men and women are very different. And and the differences are a lot more than just the obvious differences. Okay, it is in our nature. The things that give us problems are in our nature. Okay, because women want men to be more like them, men want women to be more like them. They think. They really don't, but they think they do, and they expect them to be. For example, what is a common complaint that women have against men? Very common. They don't share their feelings. Well, I got a surprise for you, ladies. Men don't have all that many feelings. Thank you, Jesus. I mean, we just don't. I'm sorry. I mean, there are even physiological reasons for this. Okay, there's a great big bundle of connective tissue that goes from one hemisphere of your brain to the other, called the corpus callosum, and it is the pathway by which messages are sent between the two hemispheres of your brain. It is much bigger in women. One side of your brain is pretty much the logical side, the other side is pretty much the logical side, and there's a lot more communication activity that goes on between the two hemispheres, generally speaking, in women than there is in men, which suggests that because God decided He wanted them this way. It's the only explanation I have for you. Women tend to run everything through an emotional filter, and who would want it any different? The problem is we expect women not to have all these feelings. Because, see, when you ask me how I feel about something, I may not feel about it at all. I'm not being uncommunicative. I'm not failing to share my feelings. I just don't have any about some things. Okay? A friend of mine and I went on a backpacking trip one time, and he was in the middle of a divorce. And when I got home, Polly said, "What did John say about the divorce?" And I said, "Nothing." She said, "Nothing?" I said, "Nothing." She said, "You're out there for days on a backpacking trip," and he said nothing about his divorce. And I said, "Nah, it never came up." See, and to me, I would wonder, why would we go backpacking to talk about his divorce? And I hear Polly on the phone a lot of times talking. See, there is some kind of payoff for women to share their feelings with each other. There is, because they do it all the time. It's in their nature. They do it. If you come to me with your problems, I am a problem solver. That's what guys do. We solve problems. You don't want me to solve your problem. You want me to listen to you. You want me to be sensitive and to hear what you want to say. I think you want me to solve your problem, and I start to say, "Oh, well, here's all you have to do." And you look at me like, "What kind of Neanderthal are you?" So we just have these unrealistic expectations that we place on each other because we don't understand that it is in our nature as men and as women to be different. We are different by nature. See, and so what Polly has done, rather than get frustrated trying to get me to do what she wants me to do, to be what she wants me to be, she's learned to call one of her girlfriends, And it works very well. And if I need to fix somebody's problem, then I go find somebody that's got a real problem and fix that. Because it is really kind of condescending. It can appear to be, it's not, but it can easily appear to be condescending for some problem-solving guy to walk around with the attitude, oh, well, here's all you have to do, da-da-da-da-da-da, problem solved. Anything else bothering you? That feels offensive to many of you women, and so taking into account the differences by nature that we have, and not holding people responsible for things that they're not responsible for. Don't accuse me of being insensitive. I would do anything for her, anything that I can, anything. Because our book says in one place, it is a spiritual axiom that whenever I am disturbed, no matter what the cause, there is something wrong with me. I didn't like that at first. I hated that. But alas, it is true. So there are things in life that the kindest thing that we can do for ourselves is to accept that they are true. Don't get frustrated because it's not the way you think you want it. Just accept that they're true. And so after that teeing up, we're going to start off with Polly is going to be talking about. We hide these notes. By the way, I want to tell you something real quick before we go to the next thing, and that is there's a little sign up here on the front that has a web address on it, that has a user ID and a password. And if you want these notes that we do this part of the conference from, if you want these notes, they're on the internet. They're at that web address. And just help yourself to them. They're not protected. They're in the spirit of Alcoholics Anonymous for fun and for free. So if you want them, they're yours. Get them. So the next thing we're going to go into is something that we don't ever tell anybody. We don't advertise in advance because all the men will leave. But Polly is going to talk a little bit about sexuality and intimacy.